When is a bush not a bush? When it's a mulberry tree. For some reason, they always refer to it as a mulberry bush in the songs, and actually it's a tree. This is a tree that when I moved here was a 2-year tall sapling that just looked like a very tall weed. I recognized by the leaf shape that it was a mulberry tree, and so I did not prune it back at all, and we just let it grow for the past 10, 15 years. And now it's huge and produces a lot of berries. A lot of the birds love it. And we have more of them around back that are actually small enough to harvest all the berries on, because these I can only get the low-hanging fruit, which comes from the phrase, the low-hanging fruit. So let's go in back and check that out. It's harvesting time for the mulberry trees in my backyard. You already seen the one out front. That was the parent tree that was just, I swear, about this big when I moved in. This tree magically appeared out in the back here where there used to be flowers and stuff. But I like a mulberry tree better because every now and then, which is in this climate, the month of June, July, and part of August, I just come out here and pick berries, and it's the black berries. If they're black, you just pluck them off. Most of them you don't even have to pluck. If they're really ripe, they just fall off in your hands. The flavor of these berries is like a raspberry or a blackberry without the tartness, especially if they're very ripe. If they're very ripe, they have pure sweet. It tastes like jelly. So these would make great for jellies or any type of other thing. What we're going to do with them, on the other hand, is we're going to take some of these and see if I can propagate them in the grow tent, so that instead of just waiting for nature to drop some and they start growing, or me having to transplant ones out from underneath it, I can grow them and put them where I want to around the office in the growing area. So that's our goal with these today, as I'll harvest all these. Some interesting things about mulberries. They call it a bush. It's really a tree. The reason they call it a bush, as you can see, if you look back at this one, here's a wild one that's never been pruned. It's branched off on itself into 2 branches. It naturally branches a lot to look like a bush. So when you see these in the wild, they're usually shorter, they're bushier like, and you call it a mulberry bush. Now, if you're going to prune this for yourself to harvest for food, you want to chop them back. And you want to crop the top off. You want to keep all the bushes, all the branches to where you can pull them down and reach them so you can easily harvest. You don't want to, have to get ladders to harvest tiny little berries. That's not energy efficient. You'd be here all day. Especially because these keep producing berries a little at a time for months. So it's come out here, harvest the ripe ones, the rest of them stay on the branches for a little bit later, and it might even grow some more. I really love these trees, and they call them a bush. There's a few other unique things about the mulberry. Silkworms, they grow on mulberry trees. They eat the leaves, and that's Japanese silkworms, but they prefer something known as a white mulberry, which is an invasive species. It looks pretty much the same as normal ones, but the berries taste different, and the leaves are different on the shape, on the texture of them. It's for the silkworms. They prefer that type one over this one. But there's another unique thing about mulberries. We come down here. This is a perfect example on this branch here. Let me prune that back. Mulberry is the only tree in the world that has 3 distinctive leaf shapes per the same branch on the tree. You have the typical round with serrated edge, looks pretty much like an elm tree. You have one with lobes, and that looks pretty much like, resembles a maple tree. And then you have a mitten-shaped leaf, which kind of looks like state of Michigan. It's the only tree that does that. Now you also notice that this tree, this one randomly grew also. And it's been growing for quite a few years, and it's pretty big, and there's no berries. Normally a mulberry tree starts producing berries like in year 2 or 3. When it's this tall, it'll have berries on it. And it has berries for months at a time. This one has no berries yet. The reason being, this one's probably the male. You're always going to get one male tree possibly, especially in the wild like this. And most people will just get rid of it and plant more female trees for the berries. I'm leaving this one here for obvious reasons. I grow these trees not for the berries. That's why they go very tall. I'm not going to get up a ladder and harvest that. That's for the birds. That's for the environment. Those that fall to the ground, other ground creatures, squirrels and stuff get them. I leave the male tree here so that the berries that fall are viable. So when they go out in the woods by the riverbanks and everything else, these grow more. And more of these put more food into the environment for the wildlife. That's why. So we're going to take these berries inside. We're going to strain some. We're going to plant some just in the dirt. We're going to put some just wet. And we're going to see if we can get them to germinate, what's required for them. I already know that since this is a summer plant, that the berries don't have to winter over. They should just hit the ground and start growing pretty much as long as they're wet and slightly buried. We'll find out, and we know they are viable because there's male, and none of these trees were all ever planted. They're just randomly appeared, so they're heirloom trees. This should be fun. Science. And with that, puff, puff, fast, no parking on the grass. Wait for the truck.